Hey, what's up, everybody? BDF44 coming at you with another video. All right, so I want to jump straight into what I think of the Boston Celtics versus the Brooklyn Nets matchup, since we now know that series is solidified. Um, to be honest with you, as I said in the video I just made talking about the Clippers and Beverly, as it pertains to this series, I really do think this is an Eastern Conference final. It basically set up in the first round. You could argue these are arguably two of the best teams, most worthy teams in the East right now. Because the way that Boston's been blowing people out basically for the last 2 months, I could argue they've been the best team in all of basketball. You know, if not them, Phoenix. They're just playing basketball at a level that you have to respect. And the thing about it is, um, I would be even more bullish on that team if Robert Williams didn't go down. You know, obviously they lost him. I don't know what his status is, if he's going to be available at any point in this series or in these playoffs. Just I'm not aware, but they're not expecting him to start the series, I don't think, and that is a tough blow for them, particularly given the fact that they're going to have to deal with a guy like Andre Drummond, who's been playing really well lately, rebounding the ball, doing all the things that he does, on top of everything else that the Nets throw at you. So it's going to be it's going to be a tough situation because, you know, in my opinion, I think the Celtics, the way that they're able to attack teams is they're killing them on both sides and they're just enacting their will on them. It's like I said, every time I look up, the Celtics are winning every game by like 15 or more points. But it's kind of hard to sustain that type of scoring against a Kyrie Irving and a KD, particularly in a playoff setting. You know Kyrie's going to be very, very motivated against the Boston Celtics. It's his old team. That situation did not go very well, and he left them for Brooklyn. So the last thing he wants to do is get knocked out in the first round by a Boston Celtics team that he left behind. And, you know, I think at this point in time, the Boston Celtics, you have to imagine, are the better team, given the fact that they're seeded too. They're going to have the home court advantage. I do think that matters. And Brooklyn's going to have a tough time in this series. But there's a big but. And the big but is this: the greatness of KD and Kyrie Irving is going to be very, very hard to overcome. Now, granted, I have a lot of respect, a very, very great deal of respect for what the Boston Celtics can bring to the table from a superstar perspective as well. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, they're the real deal, man. Derek White, you have to respect what they're bringing to the table. You know, obviously a resurgence from Al Horford playing the way that he does. Marcus Smart is healthy. Clearly, he's gonna have like some Patrick Beverly type energy to bring to that series. So Brooklyn is not going to have any nights off, any plays off. And if they don't have 100% out of both of those superstars, they will be going home against the Boston Celtics. That is not out of the question at all. A lot of people, I think, are going to assume that this series is going to go the Nets' way just simply because of the names involved, what we know KD is about. But I would caution everybody to understand that the will of Jason Tatum is also very, very strong. He's younger, and I think that could play a very big role in this series. If Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are shooting efficiently in this series to offset the obvious efficiency of the superstars on the Nets, this does favor Brooklyn. Boston. Most definitely favors Boston if they're able to match that efficiency. But if they're having 8 for 22 games, that plays right into the Nets' hands. So, you know, guys like Bruce Brown are going to be very important in this series. You know, Goran Dragic is going to be very important in this series. Anybody who can hit a shot. Obviously, Claxton is going to be important defensively. And, you know, all in all, just looking at this series, I think it's probably going to go the distance. I see this going 7. I really do. Barring any injuries or any weird stuff happening. It's just going to come down to who can close. You know, who's going to close, who's going to get the closing shot, and who's going to get the closing stop. And when it comes to the word stop, well, I'll tell you, the type of defense I saw from KD tonight makes me think that he's gonna be wide awake. But the problem is, there's no question about who's the better defensive team between those two teams. It's the Boston Celtics. And I just wonder if that's going to be the story. You know, if it's going to come down to the Boston Celtics defense getting stops against the Brooklyn Nets and that fantastic will of those two artists, in KD and Kyrie. At some point in time, you expect Ben Simmons to come back. You don't know what he's giving you, if he does give you something, but I hear that they've activated him. He's been practicing. We've seen him shoot the three and all that, but that's not the problem. The problem is you're going to ask him to play a very, very physical role night in and night out in these playoffs. And if he's not able to do that for you, the chances are he's going to be a liability, because he has not been worked into what it is that you do offensively. And he's a very unorthodox player who is much better with the ball in his hands, creating for others. So if you can't put him on the best player and he's not efficient in playing defense, then chances are what you have is an offensive liability that will not shoot and that shrinks the floor. So he's not just a piece that you can just toss out there. He's not a fluent player like that. You have to have a plan for him. And most importantly, he's going to have to be in the best shape possible so that he can be at his most effective way, which is guarding the best player on the other team. If he's not in the best shape to guard Giannis, if he's not in the best shape to guard Joel, if he's not in the best shape to guard Jason Tatum, then chances are you do not need him on the floor at all. He's not going to help you. You know what I mean? If he's a liability shooting the free throw, he's a liability in other areas. You just need to make sure that his conditioning is where it needs to be, or you might as well just not even play him. And so that's what I think of that situation. I ultimately think if Ben Simmons is not able to return at full capacity, it probably does lean toward the Boston Celtics winning the series. I just think that you're going to have a lot of things riding on KD and players like Claxton to play defense and to guard a very, very talented and multi-dimensional Boston Celtic team that can attack you from many, many areas. And they too have players that can do the dirty work for them. So it's going to be tough, man. Marcus Smart, Williams, again, Derek White. These are players that you just do not want to have to see night in and night out scheming against you defensively. I just see that being a problem for the Brooklyn Nets. It's going to take outer-worldly performances from those superstars, for which you know for a fact they're going to do. So that's why I think this is ultimately going 7 games. The will and the creation of Kyrie on the fly as he continues to just do what it is that he's been doing, coupled with KD, who does what it is that he does. They have to overcome the schemes of Udoka and that defense that Boston Celtics put on the floor. That's what it is. They just have to overcome it. They have to will themselves past it with their superpowers. That's basically it. And if that doesn't happen, Boston wins. So I see this going 7. And in a 7th game, I have to imagine it like this. By the time they get to a 7th game, they've been bumped around so much. Those two teams have beaten each other so much. They've beaten each other up so much. That's how I'm looking at it. By the time this series ends, who's going to have the fresher legs? Who's going to be more tired from the war that they've been in? Who's going to be able to execute down the stretch of a Game 7? Who's fresher? And my gut tells me the fresher team is the Boston Celtics. My gut tells me that a guy like Marcus Smart and a guy like Jaylen Brown is going to have fresher legs than some of the role players like, Blake Griffin and Patty Mills down the stretch of that particular series. And without Blake Griffin, without Ben Simmons, if Ben Simmons is not back 100% by Game 7, I think Boston wins that game. And I think that's what it's going to be. So I'm going to tell you guys that right there. I'm assuming Ben Simmons is not going to be 100% by Game 7. I'm assuming those two teams are going to beat each other up. And I'm going to take Boston at home in a Game 7. Probably overtime Game 7, something like that. This coming down straight to the wire. KD's going to be fantastic. But I just think it's going to come down to something like a Marcus Smart stop. It really is. Whoever's the most healthy, whoever has the fresher legs by the end of that war should win this series. And I think these are two rookie coaches. You got to consider Steve Nash started his career last year, so he's not a rookie, he's a sophomore. But young coaches, and Udoka, who I think has been fantastic all year long, This is his first situation as a playoff coach. So take that for what it's worth. That may play a part into this as well. But that Boston Celtics having home court, that's going to be I think that's going to be important, man. I think that finals game 7 being at the Garden is important. So that's what I got to say, man. Boston Garden. Do they still call it that? I don't know. But anyway, yeah, man, that is what I got to say. I'm looking forward to that series. It's going to be a dogfight. And we're going to see how well this ages, man. I'm going to try to do a video for every series. I've already done one for, what was that matchup I did? Toronto and Philadelphia. So, yeah, 2 down, several to go, you guys. Appreciate you. PDF 44. Peace.